Please, I will always have more questions, but if he has questions, I'm very happy to answer anything I can answer.
我的主要想这个问题，一个问题，他作为一个那个就是大学的这种教授，然后同时教学工作很多年了，在这个过程当中也接触佛教的这个观点还接触禅修那就我想要知道，就是他整个佛学已经学了多少年，然后整个现在的这个通过学佛，尤其是学藏传佛教的密法以后呢，对他的转变和就感受有什么样跟大家分享？
That's a good question. I don't know how long I've been practicing, is the honest answer. Probably at least since I was 12, maybe younger than that. I was born in California, and Buddhism is around, it's just available there. So I remember going to Japanese temples when I was little and ringing the bell, and really enjoying that. When I started university, I had a choice between either doing biology or doing Buddhist studies. And because of and actually to me they're the same thing, but that would take a while to explain. So I wound up doing Sanskrit and then working on Buddhist texts, and by a lucky accident I was able to go work in Nepal with the last remaining Sanskrit Dorje Lopon, the last remaining Sanskrit Bhattacharya. There is still a tradition. And so studied with them. I took lower, like open public empowerments, like Avalokiteshvara empowerments then, but it was only in 2001 that I had a proper empowerment from Penno Rinpoche. That was an amazing, that was a very good one. It was a very powerful one. First off, because it happened in Yangmingsho, and because I was able to see many of the really good Khenpos and Rinpoche that I knew were all there. I also had very strong visions during that empowerment that have shaped what I have tried to meditate on ever since, and how I've tried to understand things. There are at least two answers to his question about how the practice of tantric meditation has changed me. So I think one answer is around confidence. There's a fundamental principle in Tantra, which is the principle of non-duality, Nibbametta. And he's right. He hasn't said it directly, but he's right. In the West, it's difficult to both teach Buddhism and be Buddhist. People see that as somehow untrustworthy. Somehow you have to have scientific distance from what you teach. And so I was always very cautious how I taught. But taking the tantric commitments, taking the samaya, meant that that was no longer a choice. I had to be one person. And that made everything easier. It's meant that I must teach. So in my university, I have no choice. The Tantric commitments say, if a good student comes, you must teach them. So I do. It's meant that because I do a lot of work with Himalayan people who live in Scotland, if they say to me, we need you to do a ritual for us, then I go find the ritual and I do it. There's no point in being shy. I have to do this now. And in that sense, the non-duality which sits underneath all tantric practice, a fundamental commitment to non-duality, actually makes it much easier to balance what might be a divided life. The other answer to the question is, it has to do with one of my teachers from Nepal, who was a very, very wise man. And he said that for the complete tantric empowerment to happen outside Buddhist Asia, a Drupchen, a Mahasiddha, had to find the mandala in the landscape that would be the real mandala in the landscape that made it possible to give the teachings. Now, this is something that's very important to that school of Buddhism. Again, it's made me think about where I live differently. So I am now very carefully studying the landscape, trying to understand where the mandala is around Scotland and how we take Scotland and make it not just someplace where there's a Buddhist center, but someplace that is Buddhist, in the sense that is meant when we talk about actually visualizing a mandala in a place. That's much more difficult and a much longer term project. But those are two answers. There are probably more. I think one other answer, now that we've got two, I'll give a third one too. If I'm a Buddhist and a professor, then one's constantly switching back and forth all the time. But if I have to be both because of the tantric commitments, the samaya, and because of the non-duality of wisdom and compassion, then recognizing the 5 poisons and transforming them becomes much, much easier. Everything you do in a classroom, in a meeting, applying for funding, traveling on trains, becomes an opportunity to transform the 5 poisons into nectar.